I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons first. Thank you so much to my Bibliospren, Bibliohowlers, and my Bibliomancers. It means a lot to me that you give me your extra support for my passion and hobby. Hi everyone, Patrick here. Today's video I'll be talking about all the books that I finished last month in the month of April. And last month I finished reading 6 novels and also 14 volumes of manga, which is pretty good quantity-wise. And although I enjoyed pretty much everything I read, well, almost everything that I read last month, I must mention that April is sadly my least favorite reading month of the year so far. Almost all the books that I read ranges from 3 to 3.5 stars, which is still pretty good, but not amazing. And then 2 of them I gave 4.5 stars and also 4 stars rating. So none of them reach a 5 out of 5 stars rating. But come to think of it, this year I haven't gave a lot of 5 out of 5 stars rating to any book that I read. Not many anyway. Hopefully that will change in the remaining 8 months of this year. So yeah, I will start by talking about the first book that I finished last month. And it is for the second Secret Project novel by Brandon Sanderson, The Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Surviving Medieval England. I already did a full spoiler review on this one. And I gave this novel, a 3.5 out of 5 stars rating. But I must say, although I did give this rating like a 7 out of 10 stars rating, but this is my least favorite Sanderson novel that I read. When you think about it, I mean 3.5 stars is still pretty good, so you must understand that I love Brandon Sanderson's books, especially the one in the Cosmere. And I think that's one of the biggest disadvantage of this one, of the second Secret Project novel. I will not bother mentioning the full title over and over again. But yeah, for the second Secret Project novel, this one, it's kind of like a humorous novel and it's not taking part in the Cosmere. And the humor, Sanderson's humor often is a hit and miss with me. And in this novel, most of them, they're a miss, okay? I actually got secondhand embarrassment from reading some of the jokes in this book, and there are a lot. It was also difficult for me to find myself invested and interested in the main character's journey. It helps that the book is actually pretty short and it was easier for me to get through the book. Because if this book is actually longer, I would have struggled even more getting through reading this book. But if you want to know my full thoughts regarding the second Secret Project novel by Brandon Sanderson, I recommend you to check out my review on the channel. But before I move on to talking about the next book, I need to give my praises to Steve Argall. Steve Argall is the illustrator behind the second Secret Project novel, and without him, I think this novel would have suffered even more. He did such a great job in enhancing the overall quality of the novel, and with each page I turn in the second Secret Project novel, I get excited to find out what's the next artwork that Steve Argall will provide. And in total, there are more or less 100 unique illustrations to this book, from comic strips, full interior illustrations, colored and black and white, and then chapter headers. Every chapter header in this book is unique to its own. There is no repetition to the chapter header, and then full colored and papers, so many more. I think Steve Argall has outdone himself on the creation of the second Secret Project novel. What an amazing contribution, and I think for his artwork alone, this book is a must-read, at least for that, even if the content and the narrative is not clicking with me too well. And the next book that I finished last month, it is Mother of Learning Arc 2 or Volume 2 by Nobody 103 or Domagoj Kurmaj. And yeah, this is the continuation to Mother of Learning Arc 1, so this is the second volume, published by Raidmark Creative, and I love this one. This one almost topped over what I thought about the first volume, which I highly enjoyed already, and it would actually top that if I didn't feel mixed about the first 35% of volume 2. Now 35% is actually a huge part of the second volume, and that's kind of a shame. So in my review of Mother of Learning Arc 1, I did mention that I think it is time for Zorian Kaczynski, the main character, it is time for him to explore outside of the Kyoria Magical Academy. And I got what I wanted. But you know what they say, right? Be careful what you wish for, and I did get what I wished for. However, the result did not go as good as I hoped it would be. So the first 35% of Volume 2, even though the story still takes place in the time loop, the endless time loop that Zorian is trapped in right now, but the first 35% of Volume 2 did explore outside of the Magical Academy. And I thought this would be an amazing part. As it turns out, it did not work for me as much as I hope. I actually felt bored reading through the first 35% of Mother of Learning Arc 2, which is a shame because after I got through the first 35% and then Zorian came back to the Magical Academy, wow, everything in this volume is better than the first volume. Zorian has come so far since the first time he appeared in Mother of Learning Arc 1, and I love his character development so much. We also get to learn more about the supporting characters like Kiriel and then Zvim, if that's the correct way to pronounce the name, Zack, and plenty other characters. We also get to learn more about the world, and yes, in this book, we finally get to find the truth behind the time loop. I do not think it is a spoiler to say that. I mean, finishing Volume 2 of Mother of Learning means that we are halfway through Mother of Learning, the entire series now, and I think it is the right time. It is about time we get to learn about the truth behind the time loop and what caused it. And I loved it. I love the revelations, I love the tension that is packed into Volume 2, and I think Volume 3 and Volume 4 will have a big chance of topping over the first 2 volumes of Mother of Learning. I have a blast reading through this series. Contrary to the negative perception that web novels are instantly categorized as bad, inferior, or not well polished, I certainly do not feel that way with Mother of Learning. It is creative, it is engaging, I love the world, I love the characters. I think the author has successfully packed so much content into the relatively limited premise of this series. It is incredible, really. If you want to read a time loop or time travel fantasy done right, I think you should read Mother of Learning. And I'm already endorsing this series without finishing through this series. But I am confident that the second half of Mother of Learning will be even better than the first half, now that the groundwork, all of them, have been established. I did read Mother of Learning Arc 1 using the hardcover published by Raidmark Creative, and I cannot wait. I cannot wait to receive the second volume in its hardback format. So overall, I gave Mother of Learning Arc 2 same rating as the first volume, a 4.5 out of 5 stars rating. And if it weren't for me not clicking with the first 35% of the book, I think this would have been a 4.5 stars rounded up to 5 stars, or maybe even a full 5 out of 5 stars rating. That's my prediction anyway, but unfortunately, I did not click with the first 35% of the book. Still, doesn't change my opinion though, that this is a pretty damn good novel. And the third novel I finished last month, it was A Touch of Light by Tiago Abdallah. This is the first book in Ashes of the Avarin series, and sad to say that this one did not work as much as I hope as well, because I give this one a 3 out of 5 stars rating. And I cannot deny the first half, more than the first half of this book, I struggled through it a lot. I came into this one after reading through the prequel novella, that's A Prelude to Ashes, and I love that novella so much. And I think if you haven't read A Touch of Light, if you haven't read Ashes of the Avarin series yet, I highly recommend you to start this series from reading Prequel to Ashes. So I already did a full spoiler-free review of this one on Goodreads and on my blog, Novel Notions, but I will just repeat what I said here. The reason why I did not click with A Touch of Light as much as I hope is I did not expect Tiago Abdallah to employ the lack of exposition narrative that is used by Steven Erikson into his book in A Touch of Light. So yeah, for the first half of this novel, at least the first half of this novel, expect to be confused. So many names, so many terminologies were being thrown out without explanation, and it is up to readers to pick up the pieces. And well, sometimes readers do enjoy that. And not gonna lie, I enjoy reading that in Malazan, the Book of the Fallen. Even though I felt lost, even though I did not understand what's going on, but I still found myself really immersed in the world of Malazan. But sad to say that it did not happen as fast as I hoped with A Touch of Light. It took me I think in total 75% of the book before I felt fully immersed with A Touch of Light. So that's a lot of pages, almost done with the book. But thankfully, there is a bright side to this, because I read the prequel novella first, A Prelude to Ashes. One of the POV characters, Adrian, I found it easy to read his POV chapters. Now, his POV chapter, Adrian's POV chapter, still contained that lack of exposition evident in the other 2 POV characters as well. But because I have grown to care about his character in A Prelude to Ashes, and because of reading that novella, his motivation in this book became more clearer as well. So in other words, because I've read the prequel novella first, I think it was so much easier for me to care about Adrian. And also I think his story, his motivation is so much more clearer than the other two POV characters, which kind of felt like a survival story in a way. But if I'm not mistaken, A Prelude to Ashes is written after Tiago Abdallah published A Touch of Light. So if that's the sign of Tiago Abdallah's narrative to come, I think I can expect great things in the second book, A Shade of Madness. And yes, I will indeed continue with the series. By the end of this novel, I have certainly become interested in all the POV character story, and I look forward to finding out where their stories will go next. Fingers crossed we will have more Griffin's actions as well in the second book, because in this book, that did not happen as frequently as I hoped. So yeah, I gave A Touch of Light a 3 out of 5 stars rating, but I think the second book will have a really good chance of being superior compared to this one. I think I will read A Shade of Madness in the month of July or August. We will see, depending on my reading mood. And then the next novel that I finished last month, it is a great one. It is The Bone Shard War by Andrea Stewart. Take a look at this beautiful cover art. The purple cover art is really striking. I think Sasha Vinogradova did an amazing job with the cover art, again, just like with the previous two books. But back to this novel. This is the third and the final book in the Drowning Empire trilogy by Andrea Stewart, and The Bone Shard Daughter, the first book in this trilogy, is one of my favorite fantasy debut novels. I read that one before its publication. I read an advanced reading copy of The Bone Shard Daughter, and I immediately called it my favorite fantasy debut of that year, in the year 2020. And yes, it remains that way until the end of the year. And The Bone Shard War takes place 2 years after what happened at the end of The Bone Shard Emperor. This time skip, I did not predict this, and it did take me some time to get used to the time skip. It felt like I missed a novella or a novel before this book. But after a while, after reading through the entire novel as well, I finally understood why Andrea Stewart implemented this time skip. And I think in the long run, it worked effectively in developing all the main characters' relationship and also development, especially for Jovis and his relationship with the other characters like Mephi and Lynn. I did find the middle section of the Bone Shard War to be kinda a bit repetitive. I do not feel that it needs to be that long, but you know what? It pays off nicely in the final 150 pages. Yes, the final 150 pages of the Bone Shard War is an all-out war. Yeah, it is the climax sequence of the entire trilogy, and I loved it. But most importantly, I think this one, it has such a beautiful and satisfying conclusion. Well, it is kind of bittersweet, but it is surprisingly so emotional. It has an emotional ending, and you know, I actually like the characters in the Drowning Empire trilogy, but I never felt like I was fully in love with any of them. None of them. Maybe Mephi and the Olason, but that's it. But I think that's exactly what made the Bone Shard War so impressive, because I get so emotional reading the conclusion to the Bone Shard War. I think Andrea Stewart did a great job with this concluding novel, and considering that this is her first series, I am excited to find out what's going to happen next in her newest series. I think The Gods Below is the title of the first book, or the title of the series. But yeah, I am very excited to read that one. I think that one has the chance to be even more epic and better than the Drowning Empire trilogy. But well, if you love The Bone Shard Daughter and also The Bone Shard Emperor, well, I think there's a really good chance you will love the conclusion to the Bone Shard War. I think it is a goodbye, a nice goodbye to the characters of the series. And yeah, I highly enjoyed this one, and I look forward to reading Andrea Stewart's newest book as soon as possible. And then the fifth novel I finished last month, it is The Severing Sun by Von Roycroft. I gave this one overall a 3.5 out of 5 stars rating. So for this one, many people have compared this to John Gwyn, and I can certainly understand why this resemblance is mentioned often, because I do feel that resemblance in this book. And also, well, I'm a huge fan of John Gwyn's book, of The Faithful and the Fallen in particular. That one is my favorite series by John Gwyn. And I found out about The Severing Sun through a Philip Chase review. I think Philip did a great job in explaining the strengths of the novel, and you know, I enjoyed this one. especially starting from the page 200, or to be more precise, after chapter 16 happened. Yeah, I know that's a lot of chapters. So yeah, I guess this, in a way, well, it goes back again to the things that I said with the previous books in this video, except the Bone Shard War. I had difficulty in the first 200 pages of The Severing Sun. To be more precise, it is not difficulty, but, well, it is too fast-paced. Yes, that is that thing. It is too fast-paced for me. I prefer things to slow down a bit for me to care about the characters first. And I think the plot in The Severing Sun just happened too quickly. And before I get to care about the characters, events after events keep happening, and there is even kinda an insta-love going on, and yeah, it's kind of hard for me to find myself interested and invested in those at first because things just progress way too fast to my liking. But after chapter 16 happened, after 200 pages have passed, and I felt like I finally got it to understand the characters and their motivations, their personality, and also the supporting characters. So The Severing Sun is told mainly to the perspective of two main characters, Valdan and Elend. And after I got to know about them and then the supporting characters surrounding these two main characters, well, that's when I started to feel so impressed and immersed in The Severing Sun. Just to give you an idea of how invested I am with this book, well, here's the thing. I read the first 200 pages in 4 days, and then I read the remaining more than 300 pages in 2 days. Yeah, that shows the differences of my engrossment with the book. I think if you love coming-of-age fantasy and you also love historical fantasy, I think you will love The Severing Sun. And if you are someone who found, let's say, you found a Malice a bit too slow in the beginning. I did not, because I love slow-paced books. But if you found Malice, the first half of Malice, to be a bit too slow, and you want something a bit faster, then choose The Severing Sun. I think The Severing Sun will fit the coming-of-age fantasy that you're looking for. And it needs to be mentioned that The Severing Sun works absolutely well as a standalone novel. I mean, if the author, Von Roycroft, decided to end the series right here, it still would work really well as a standalone novel. But no, this is a trilogy, with the second and third book being planned to be released within this year as well. So you really don't have to wait long for the conclusion of the trilogies. And yes, the cover art, take a look at it. This is done by John Anthony Di Giovanni, and I think the cover art looks absolutely beautiful. Love the cover art so much. And it is a wraparound cover art, which I think needs to happen more in fantasy because it's getting rarer and rarer to find a wraparound cover art in fantasy books lately, and I'm sad about it because I love wraparound cover art. So yeah, although I did struggle with the beginning of this book, again, just like the previous 3 books I just mentioned, but at the end of the day, overall, I highly enjoyed The Severing Sun, and I think the second and the third book has the potential to be better than the debut novel by Von Roycroft. If you love historical fantasy and you love reading fast-paced fantasy novel, then read The Severing Sun by Von Roycroft. And finally, the last novel I finished last month, it is a reread of Morning Star by Pierce Brown. This is the third book in the Red Rising Saga series. And I think on reread, because this is the first time I'm doing a reread of Red Rising Saga, and in comparison, compared to Red Rising, Golden Sun, and then this one, this is actually the best one on reread. I know that's surprising, and I think this just jumped up my ranking so much. It just might, I need to think about it more, but this just might be my favorite novel in the entire series so far now. It used to belong to Golden Sun, but now, after doing a second read, I think I love Morning Star even more. But again, I will do a second read of Iron Gold and then Dark Age pretty soon, so this opinion might change again in the days to come. And then, of course, with the upcoming Lightbringer, the 6th novel in the Red Rising Saga, so my ranking for Red Rising will probably go a constant up and down change. But it doesn't change the fact that I love every book in the series. And right now, at this moment, after doing a reread of Morning Star, this is my favorite novel in the entire series so far. This is the conclusion to the first trilogy in the Red Rising Saga. The second series in the Red Rising Saga begins with Iron Gold. But for those of you who do not want to continue to the second series of Red Rising Saga, which I'm confused why, because they're awesome as well. But if you do not want to continue, well, this is a satisfying conclusion to the first trilogy. Very satisfying conclusion with epic space opera war, amazing portrayal of brotherhood between Darrow, Sevro, and Ragnar. They are just so well done in my opinion. Pierce Brown did such an amazing job in crafting the friendship between Darrow and Sevro. I think they're still my favorite brotherhood in fiction. In speculative fiction, maybe I need to think about this harder. I mean, there are definitely at least on par with Royce and Hadrian and Locke and Jeans at the very least. But yeah, I love Darrow and Sevro. I love the character development, and Morningstar immediately begins after that brutal ending, and I love this one. I really love this one. I cannot talk too much about it because just in case you still haven't read Morningstar, but yes, this one, especially the second half of this book, it has such brilliant depiction of space opera battle. They're epic, emotional, so intense, oh so intense. If this is your first time reading through it, I think the second half of this one will give you plenty of exhilaration. I mean, even though this is my second read through Morningstar, there are still so many scenes that felt so emotional and postpounding. It is so good. So good. Highly recommended, and once again I'm reminded why Red Rising Saga is still my favorite sci-fi series of all time. I cannot wait to do a second read of Iron Gold this month. I already did a full spoiler review for Morningstar, well, the entire series practically, on Goodreads and also Novel Notions, and I think on this reread, because I just reread Morningstar, I think I will do an updated review of Morningstar on Goodreads and also Novel Notions. But I'm not sure whether I will do a review of Morningstar on this channel, unless of course there are a lot of demands for it, but I do not think that's the case. This series is super popular now. So that's all the novels that I finished last month. As for manga, this is the first one that I finished, The Witch and the Night Must Survive. So this one is sent to me by Yen Press, and this is the first volume. The second volume is not out yet, and just like the majority of manga series I read, I tried to give manga series like 5 or 10 volumes. Yes, I know that's a lot of volumes, but that's, I think, fair for manga series. I like to give them 5 or 10 volumes before deciding whether the manga is good or not. But this one certainly has potential. I think the artwork by Gonbe Shinkawa and the story by Daichi Kamoto, I think their duo works well into the first volume of The Witch and the Night Must Survive. And yeah, this is an example of the artwork. This is the first page, and this one is done in full color. And I'm going to open a random page just to show you the kind of artwork you can see here. Ta-da! Yeah, this is the artwork by Gonbe Shinkawa, and I think it looks really good. So yeah, hopefully the rest of the manga series will be awesome. For now, I would just say that the first volume do show potential for the manga series to be great, and I look forward to reading the second volume as soon as possible. Thank you so much to Yen Press for sending me a review copy of this one, because without Yen Press sending me a copy, I do not think I will ever find out about this manga series. And finally, for the remaining 13 volumes of manga that I read last month, it is for Fire Force by Atsushi Kubo. So this one is the creator behind Soul Eater, and Soul Eater is one of my favorite manga series. I love Soul Eater, I love the anime, even though the anime did not fully adapt the manga series, but I did enjoy the anime. The manga series is even better because it continued beyond what happened in the anime version. So because of that, because of my enjoyment for Soul Eater, and then hearing that Fire Force is actually a prequel manga series to Soul Eater, I gave this manga series a try. And well, it was a disappointment. A total disappointment. This manga series, it took me an entire month to read through 13 volumes, and that's a long time. It is a long time for me. Usually I can read about 30 to 50 volumes of manga, but even just reading 13 volumes of this one is already a struggle, which is a shame because there are so many great things about Fire Force, but they are in particular burdened by unnecessary fan service. It is just too much. It is too much. I've read a lot of manga series, and this is one of the worst one that I've read. It really almost felt like the author become a pervert when he's creating a Fire Force. It is that bad. There is one character in this manga series named Tamaki, and she is just over-sexualized for no particular reason other than for random nudity and undressing. It is so bad. It is so bad, seriously. I just want to find out how Fire Force became the prequel manga series to Soul Eater, and I did not get what I wanted in the first 13 volumes, and I do not think I can stomach any more of this unnecessary fan service. So, you know what? I think I would just jump immediately to the last 2 volumes or something and read how it became the prequel, a manga series to Soul Eater, and I just do not care anymore. I don't usually do this, but this one is just so bad. It will most likely become the most disappointing manga series I read within this year. So yeah, that's all the novels and manga series that I read within the month of April. As I said, it is not a truly amazing reading month. Most of the books and manga series I read last month is, well, I felt mixed about them, even though most of them are still positive, but I felt mixed. It's not as amazing as I wanted it to be. But just like life, not every reading month can be amazing. But I would not close this video without mentioning which one will become my favorite book of the month. And I think I will have to pick Mother of Learning Volume 2 by Nobody 103 or Domagoj Krumaj, because despite the first 35%, the remaining 65% of the novel were just too good in my opinion. So damn good, and it made me super excited to be reading the remaining second half of the series as soon as I can this month. So yeah, that's it. That's the end of today's video. That's the end of my April 2023 wrap up. And do let me know what you think about my wrap up, and of course do tell me how many books you finished last month and which one was your favorite book of the month. As always, thank you so much for watching and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me.